Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We are actually on set live here today at the Cahaba Brewery in Birmingham, Alabama. And just in the other room, the F3T is going on, which we are pretty convinced this is the largest fly fishing event ever in Alabama from that turnout over there.
Yeah. I mean,
there are a ton of people over there.
Yeah. I would have guessed more. It is packed.
It's packed. I didn't know that there were 200 people that fly fished in the state of Alabama.
I don't think I did either.
But they're all over there.
They're all here.
There must be some people from Mississippi that snuck across the border to come over here tonight.
No, there's definitely no people that fly fish in Mississippi.
That's true. That's true. There's an Orbit store. Oh, those people. That's right. I forget there's an interstate that way. All right. Well, guys, thanks for joining us. So we are here in Birmingham with, I finally somehow convinced Brent to come down to the south. Got him out of the West Coast to come do some cool fishing for bass. And we're going to get into that. But we are here today with Drew, who owns a fly guiding outfit company here in and around Middle Alabama. We're also here with Matt Lewis, who is a expert fisheries biologist, knows everything about the bass in Alabama. He literally wrote the book on bass fly fishing for red-eye bass. Literally wrote the book. We wrote the comic strip. He wrote the book on it. So we've got two really great guys here with us that we just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about some of the bass fishing, what we did. We were out on the water yesterday. We experienced some trials and tribulations, but we also had some successes.
Had a great day. Yeah.
Adventures in Mississippi.
I caught a lot of Alabama bass. It was great.
Yes. We caught a ton of fish. We caught the biggest red eye that I've personally ever seen in my life.
Nice.
Those things are crazy looking.
Super cool.
All the markings on their heads, the blue in their stomachs.
Yeah.
We're not getting to that yet. Drew, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah,
Give us
sure.
like a quick bit of what you do.
Yeah, so we started East Alabama fly fishing 8 years ago, and I taught school, needed a way to pay for daycare, was fishing a lot, and so it just kind of clicked. Had an opportunity to buy the raft, and it grew from there. But it's been great. Love the Tallapoosa River, love East Alabama, all the other rivers we have. It's fabulous, and we're pretty much. It's crazy to think Alabama's got a ton of water, but we're pretty much one of the only full-scale, full-service drift boat, raft style river fishing guides in Alabama. The only one that does it like we do it. We really work hard. Where if you want to come to Alabama and fish for bass, we're the go-to people. If you just Google. If you do any Google search fly fishing in Alabama or Alabama fly fishing, we'll be one of the first ones that pops up.
Click the link in the description down here. Click the links on the Instagrams as well.
Right.
We're going to be tagging these guys and all of that so you can easily find them and figure out how to contact them.
Yeah, so love it. Love being on the river. I'm a teacher, so guiding is just an extension of that. We have other guides that work with me, so it's not just me. We've got a great team.
4 guides going now?
4 other guides that taking people out during the week, during the weekend. So come on down to Alabama and come fishing with us. So,
and maybe one of the coolest things too is we were talking about yesterday. You were saying there's not much of a guiding season for you.
No, yeah. I mean, it's So a lot of people aren't thinking about fishing in January and February, but that's actually one of the best times to catch a really quality fish on the river. Really from January, February, November, it does kind of really die down. So November, December, not so much. But
you guys get to go home and see the wives.
Right. Yeah. For 2 months, we get to see our family.
Thanksgiving through Christmas, and then we're back.
Yeah, we hit the holidays and we're back. But
the fishing may be great. We just don't know.
That's time out. That's time out for the year.
True. But yeah, I mean, and I think what's special about our area, especially, is that when you come fish, you get a chance to fish for 2. And, Matt can talk more about this too, but the 2 species of bass that coexist with each other. They're both supposed to be there. They're both native, and so something unique with the red-eye bass and or Tallapoosa bass and the Alabama bass. They're not competing. They coexist. So you get a chance for that. In spring, you have a chance for striper which is a lot of fun. And it's a great, it's a great streamer stretch. But it's also one of the best topwater that I've fished around the South, especially.
Is topwaters just poppers, or is that like a mix of the terrestrial hoppers and?
Yeah, early spring it'll be more terrestrials and hoppers, stuff that doesn't make as much commotion. But then pretty much in May, popper season's on. There's not a lot of shad in the river, and so our fish primarily feed on crayfish and things that fall on top of the water. And so, I mean, we catch so many fish that'll have bellies full of crayfish. Yeah, they just pounded this popper. They're just so voracious eaters. And so it's just a special river. It's clean. It's, not a whole lot of pollution, not a whole lot of trash.
And it's beautiful. I mean, all the shoals and like clean water, clean riverbanks. That is a beautiful float that we did.
It's really interesting to me after having fished a lot across the country is like, it's just as pretty as any river that I've ever been on, from Canada to Montana, Idaho.
I'm not going to give you that fully. I'll give you that when you're looking like in the immediate surroundings.
Yes,
it is nice to have a peak in the background.
I'll give you that. I will give you that.
This is very, very.
It is not what in your mind's eye. If you don't live in Alabama and you hear we're fly fishing in Alabama, you're like, huh?
No, it was awesome.
It is not what you're envisioning. People watching at home who've never been here. You definitely got to watch the videos.
Absolutely.
And see it.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully there's plenty of videos coming out from us about it. There is plenty to look at. And maybe that's just my heritage. Like, I'm from Colorado with the mountains, so maybe I'm like, where's my mountain?
But definitely, especially if in the winter, if you guys have an itch to go fish, give Drew a call, come down here, hang out with him. Like you said, January, February, it might be freezing cold out west and you get in a snowstorm, but you can pack up some. I mean, it's not hot in Alabama in the winter, but it's not snowing.
No, we have 70-degree days in January and February. I mean, it can get cold sometimes, but we have some warm days, and that's especially when it's really good.
Yeah. Get yourself a break from that West Coast, whatever, that Rocky Mountain weather in the winter, and come hang out with these guys.
Definitely.
And then, Matt, you want to tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure, yeah. So I actually spent 10 years working in human genetics, and then I wrote the book, Fly Fishing for Redeye Bass. And in writing that book, it kind of led me to go back and do a PhD to better understand these fish, but also fill in the knowledge gaps that we had about those fish in Alabama and really across the Southeast. So understanding what factors are affecting those fish in the different river systems, whether it's hybridization, pollution, urbanization, there's all sorts of habitat loss and things like that we're dealing with. And so I was able to kind of parlay that into a PhD program, getting to actually study the genetics of redeye bass and better understand what habitats they need. And that kind of just worked perfectly with my personal passion of, promoting fly fishing in Alabama, protecting Alabama's biodiversity and native resources, and helping, kind of break down that idea that people have that bass fishing in Alabama is all largemouth and glitter boats on lakes, and it really can be something totally different. And a lot of times when I leave the stream and I'm fly fishing for redeye bass, people are always, I didn't know there were trout in here. And I'm like, well, there's not, whatever.
So this is a redeye bass from the Tallapoosa River system. It's commonly called a Tallapoosa bass. And you can see some of the things that differentiate it from Alabama bass are these white edges on the caudal fin right here, and also this this blue crescent behind the eyeball, and just a general blue coloration around the entire fish. There's a lot of blue, and that separates them from Alabama bass. They typically won't have any blue.
Look at the blue. I don't even get into it with some people, but then some people are interested and legitimately want to know. And so I spend time telling them about redeye bass. And so I think it's just a way to, the big overarching goal for all of this has always been to bridge the gap between, there's so much research for salmonids and it goes out to rivers and streams out west. And there's not a lot in the Southeast around bass. And so, for lack of a better term, bass have been kind of the redheaded stepchild, and their rivers have too.
Would you say the red-eyed stepchild?
Yeah, that'd be good. And so we're really trying to bring more prominence to the fisheries that are in the South, and by doing that, hopefully, more prominence to the places they call home, getting people more interested in conservation. So we're essentially using this fish as a driver for watershed level conservation, which is just something that's not thought of or done commonly in the South.
I mean, it's a great indicator species of
Absolutely.
river health.
Yeah, like
for
canary
sure
in the coal mine.
Yep.
Thing. So if red-eye bass aren't doing well, chances are there's a lot of other things not doing well. So
For sure.
Yeah, one thing I noticed was when you cast a fly into some slack water, there was probably 4 or 5 different species looking at that fly. There is certainly not just bass in there. And granted, they might be small and whatever, but there's a huge diversity of species in that river.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't around you guys the whole time, but I caught a red-breasted sunfish that was every bit of 12 inches. I mean, it was huge. We got pictures of it, but I mean, those things are colored up, and they look like a red-eye bass. They're more at home on a Caribbean island. Or something.
The Alabama cichlid.
Yeah, the Alabama cichlid.
They're cool.
So I got the Tallapoosa Slam, the red-breast sunfish, the Alabama bass, and the red-eye bass yesterday. So.
Boom.
Can you explain to me what the Alabama bass is? Because I've heard of spots. I don't know what a spotted bass is. They got stripes to me. And
it's really confusing because they look almost identical. Like to the casual observer, if you look at a picture of spotted bass, you look at a picture of Alabama bass, it's totally different. There are things that are different, like if you want to do lateral line scale counts and things like that, which people aren't going to do.
Mostly normal people do.
Yeah, I mean, I always carry a magnifying glass so I can see that on the stream.
Always.
But no, they have certain markings on their dorsal side that whether it touches their dorsal fin or not. I mean, there's things you can do to look at. But primarily, they started looking at the genetics of Alabama bass and spotted bass, and what they saw was that they're totally different. I mean, they're as different as smallmouth are from largemouth bass, and so genetically. And so what they determined is that what we call spotted bass in the Mobile River system are actually Alabama bass, and they were described in 2008. And so a lot of people call them a subspecies of the spotted bass, whether they're their own species. They're not a subspecies.
Alabama bass, you used to think it was a subspecies of spotted bass, but it's actually its own species. It was described in 2008, but they're native to the Mobile Basin, and you can differentiate them from redeye because they're going to have more of a solid lateral line here, whereas redeye will have vertical blotches that are evenly spaced all the way to the tail, and they don't have this crescent above the back half of the eye like redeye do, and they don't have as much color. You can see there's not a lot of blue on this fish, but this is just kind of your classic Alabama bass. You'll see a little bit of kind of pink coloration in the pectoral fins, or the pelvic fin, sorry. But yeah, just your classic Alabama bass.
And then the spotted bass are native to the Mississippi River drainage or Tennessee River drainage. So they call those Kentucky bass a lot, Kentucky spots. And so Alabama bass get a little bit bigger than spotted bass. And actually, I do a lot of work with some of the Southeastern Fish and Game agencies where they have new potential state spotted bass records. They'll send me fin clips to genetically determine if it's a hybrid spotted bass, Alabama bass, or pure spotted bass. Because if it's a hybrid, of course, they don't get the state record.
And the record doesn't count.
And so we get to do a lot of cool stuff like that. No pressure, Like, I want to know this fish is.
Wait, who caught it?
Hybrid.
You don't need the fin.
Do you take bribes at all? Or?
I can be persuaded.
Okay.
Data don't lie, but data can be manipulated.
There we are.
So, no, but yeah, so Alabama bass are native to the Mobile Basin, but they have been introduced all over the place. So they're in the Chattahoochee River system. They were introduced in Lake Lanier, I think in the 80s.
They took over Lake Lanier, didn't they?
They took over.
That was a whole. I mean, we can go touch on it, but that was a whole thing.
Yes, it was a whole thing, and so they've spread through the Chattahoochee. So they're hybridizing with native, red-eye bass there, shoal bass, to a point where people are wondering, all right, are we going to have shoal bass or red-eye bass left? Because these fish just take over.
Yeah.
And they've completely converted Lake Blue Ridge in Georgia. It used to be a trophy smallmouth lake, and now it's primarily an Alabama bass lake. So they completely out-hybridize native smallmouth. And really that's been kind of a similar story as you inch up the eastern coast. So North Carolina's had issues, South Carolina, Savannah River system, especially all those upper Savannah reservoirs, Jocassee and some of those major Alabama bass introduction problems. And as we work with states doing these genetic surveys, North Carolina has issues, Virginia now has issues, the James River, some premier smallmouth destinations they have Alabama bass now. And so the question is, are we going to have smallmouth in those systems in the next 10 years? And so genetics is really kind of at the forefront of identifying where peer populations are, where hybridizing populations are, oftentimes even confirming introduction of these native, non-native fish. And how do we develop management practices to, mitigate any downstream effects from those introductions? So it's we've been busy.
But they're native to the Tallapoosa River.
They're native to the Mobile Basin, Tallapoosa River system. So
you tell Alabama bass are kind of like the Alabama Crimson Tide. They just
right. Yeah, they just take over everything. Yeah, and nobody likes it. But yeah, so it. I hope that answered your question. But yeah.
So I guess when we talk about the scene growing in Alabama for fly fishing specifically, you started 8 years ago. I don't remember. I mean, I'm sure you've been fishing for.
As far as fly fishing, I've been doing it about 12 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Alabama.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So my curiosity is, how have you guys developed as anglers? I guess did you start out with your typical 5 weight in a dry fly, and then figure out there's 7 weights in sinking lines? Can you kind of walk us through broad overview of what's changed in the last 8 years?
I think I threw a rooster tail on the fly rod the first time I
Hell yeah, brother.
Yeah. I mean, we both grew up in South Alabama, and a common bond we have. Growing up, I didn't use a fly rod, but I was always drawn to creeks and streams and rivers, and then also the coast. I've always been drawn to natural waterways instead of man-made, reservoirs and things. So I fished a lot of creeks and rivers growing up. I had a fly rod. I would use it sometimes. Went to college at Auburn, and just started kind of discovering all the water around the Auburn-Opelika area. I mean, within a 3-mile radius, you've got so many quality rivers, quality bass rivers. Just drive the interstate one direction or the highway, and you're going to cross a couple. And so I started using fly rods, started learning. Learned the hard way, did a lot of DIY stuff. And over time, I kept hearing, I would meet people and they would say things like, "Oh, I like to use a fly rod. I didn't know anybody else did either." I didn't know anybody else did that. And I started realizing that, and especially as I started the guide service, that there's actually a lot of people who like to use fly rods. Now they have a mindset that you can only go out west to do that. I also met a lot of older, more senior anglers who would say, "Yeah, we used to always use a fly rod growing up, and then they built the lake."
Popping bugs.
With popping bugs, and then they built the lake. We started fishing the lake, and so it was almost like kind of a generation got really excited about the lakes and the glitter boats, and that's fun, and I like to do that. And it seems like now, and as today's representative, people are kind of getting back to the fly rod for bass, and kind of returning back to that. And so often you think of fly rods and trout, but really, if you've got the right equipment, any fish. I mean, if you present something right, if you can present it, you can catch anything on a fly rod.
Yeah, there's no fish, maybe some 1,000-foot deep fish, but there's no fish you can catch on gear that you can't potentially catch on fly within reason.
My analogy, real quick, is that a lot of people around here and around the country love to deer hunt, and a lot of people get into bow hunting for deer. And so kind of what I say is using a fly rod for bass is like using a bow for deer.
Exactly.
It's more challenging, but that makes it more fun. It's a little bit more of an art to it. You kind of got to work a little bit more, which makes it all the more rewarding and frustrating.
Yes, absolutely.
And so if you're okay with that, fly fishing for bass is awesome. And I still fish. I mean, I've got spinning rods, and I take my girls out and we'll use worms in the pond and creek. I mean, like it's not like that around here. I mean, it's just more fun I think it's more fun to catch bass with fly rod.
More rewarding.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've always thought it was more rewarding.
Yeah. So when I was in grad school the first time doing a master's, this was back in 2008, I believe. I bought a 9-weight to catch bluegill in a pond because I had no clue that there were different weights of fly rods. And that was fun, catching bluegill on a 9-weight. And then when I discovered, there's such things like a 3-weight or a 2-weight,
you literally need to half this rod.
Yeah, it's like this is
literally.
And so then I got into fly fishing hardcore, and when I moved up to North Alabama and Madison, I discovered smallmouth, and I discovered going to the mountains and catching brook trout, in the backcountry, and I fell in love with that. And then for some reason I'd never heard of redeye bass because I grew up in South Alabama where they don't exist. And so once I discovered those, I'm like, man, this is like backcountry brook trout fishing, but like I don't have to go anywhere. Like it's here.
Yeah, it's the same thing, but it's closer to home.
And no one else is doing it.
So cool.
And so that led to the book and everything else we talked about. But one of the things that I'm proud of that we've done is myself and Jonathan Kelly. We were talking over beers at lunch one day about how to grow fly fishing in Alabama, how to bring awareness to redeye bass, how to grow this footprint of conservation, fly fishing. All these things are intertwined in Alabama, and we came up with the idea for the Redeye Slam. And so that's where we challenge anglers to catch each redeye species in a calendar year. And we had an artist, Henry Hershey, do the certificates for us. And I mean, people didn't have to pay. They just if they wanted to participate, they just said, "Hey, I want to participate." And if they completed it, we gave them a certificate. A lot of people did it just because of the certificate. They wanted that memento of, "Hey, I did this," because it's hard to do in a calendar year.
You said there was you've had about 30 people complete it?
We had that first year we had 50 sign up to do it. And in the last 4 years we've had about 30 completed. So
that's pretty good.
And there's been 3 people do a redeye slam in a day. So catch all the Mobile Basin fish.
They're way ahead. As you can imagine, the logistics or something like that. That's what makes it hard.
That's badass.
Yeah, it's cool.
And so, we grew that, and we've brought people into the sport of fly fishing through that movement. And, it's just continued to balloon out. And so what we're trying to do with things like this is bring all these people. I mean, that's how I met Drew. And Drew came into as a guide on a redeye stream. I mean, he is foundational to the things that we're doing and the movement we're doing in Alabama. And that's why we're kind of like just hand in hand. He sends people to me that want to know more about redeye. I send people to him that want to catch redeye. And things like this, we want to, anybody that has a connection to Alabama, we want to bring them into this fly fishing culture that we're trying to build here.
For sure.
So like Adam, your ties here, I mean, we want to just continue to grow this movement in Alabama. So,
and I want to add real quick something I want to say. We truly are representing a lot of people who are here today who have helped and grown. And there were people even before us, older than us, the godfathers, the pioneers in Alabama who were here. Rob Rogers, Frank Roden, Tony Cox up north. Guys that were here, and we kind of, I guess, just really got excited and started running with it. And they were all mentors for me, and kind of took me under their wing. And I also want to say, this is kind of full circle. This is cool. The first time me and Matt met was on this little podcast I was trying to do, which was not, I mean, looking back now, like, oh my goodness. But so we did a redeye bass episode. So to get to do this and to represent, all the people who've helped and contributed. I mean, Hank Hershey and his art is amazing, and that brought some legitimacy to what we're doing. Just having really awesome fish art, has been really great. So showing people that they are as cool as trout. I mean, I think a colored up smallmouth is every bit as pretty as nearly any rainbow trout I've ever seen.
It pulls a bit harder.
I mean, it pulls a lot harder too.
Yeah.
And I don't know, a little bit. That's kind of what we're trying to do too, is make the entry barrier to fly fishing a little more friendly, a little easier to pick up. And that's why we've been trying to do some media out of North Alabama and Southern Tennessee in these areas. And obviously this trip that we did this time is to teach people, like, this is not, you know, it's not what your mind's eye thinks Alabama fishing is. It's not on, you know, Gunnersville or Martin with a, you know, big bait caster. I mean, that's cool, but there's a lot more to it. And so that's kind of the same thing that we're trying to do with, and that's kind of how I also ended up talking to these guys separately anyways, was, you know, just trying to help out with that, you know, bringing awareness to how cool the fishing in this area is, that not a lot of people know it, and it's in their backyard.
Right. Yep.
One thing Adam and I started talking about in the truck after we left the Tallapoosa was this would be an awesome place to come out with your college buddies or a group of 4 or 5 guys and fly out for the weekend, come fish for a couple days and experience a new species. It's probably not near as expensive as going to Mexico or Canada, and it is a cool fishery. Like,
eat better food than where you're from.
Get the southern food.
Stop at all the
biscuits
gas
in the morning.
Every gas station.
Go to the gas station. That's the best food by far.
Yeah. But I do want to talk more about setting up the, you know, trips out here, because
I mean, you know, our website's eastalabamaflyfishing.com. We're on Instagram, and as Adam said earlier, it's linked below. But email us. We would love to set up a trip. We've got guides that can come out or can go during the week, during the weekend. You know, it's a great. I mean, we have people. We have a lot more people coming to say, "Hey, I've done, you know, this species. I live here and I fish with it. I just want to do something different." You know, and one of my favorite clients, closest clients, has fished all over the world, and he came here and he fell in love with it. Just because it's close, it's not a hassle to get here. It's a lot of fun. And it's just kind of unexpected. It's sneaky. It's sneaky good.
Yes.
You know? Like it's just, you get there and it's like, whoa. Yeah, I mean, we would love to do that. Come out, fish with us. We'll show you Southern hospitality, catch some bass on a fly rod, and have a great time.
And so we did fish yesterday. I finally got a chance to fish with these guys yesterday, and it was definitely a little overwhelming being, you know, on a river that I've never fished before. I've kind of dabbled on it. I've never done a big float. I've waded like 2 or 3 spots, but never really gotten into it. And it was a little overwhelming being with you guys. I mean, like, it even for me, but not that it wasn't inviting. It was just so much information that I was processing. Like, you know, being with you, who's on the water out there every day on this stretch and know it like the back of your hand, and then you coming in and hitting me with words, and I mean, you know, it was like, oh, here's a bass, and you're like, oh, that's a hybridized, you know, it looks like it's 32.5% this, and you're like, holy,
this thing just looks badass.
Yeah, it looks badass. And you fought really hard.
Why is this thing so blue?
This bass is blue, and we got a problem.
What's in the water?
But we had a ton of fun floating with you guys. I mean, we definitely appreciate y'all for sure meeting up with us.
We did go fish yesterday.
We fished yesterday.
And thank you guys again for taking us out. That was
glad
awesome.
y'all could come.
So we put in at Horse, which is
oh, do we want to?
We can bleep that if you guys like.
Yeah, that'd be
for
fun.
for flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we put in it.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Okay. And then we have footage on the But okay, so we put in the river, and 3 of us boats launched off. I had no clue. Adam knows smallmouth from another river, but it might be a bit different. So what? Yeah, what did happen?
I mean, you know, yesterday, I mean, we had to work for him. You know, we caught a lot of good fish. We caught some really nice redeye bass. You know, we had sunny conditions, high pressure conditions. The moon phase, you know, wasn't the best, but you know what? Like, it's the day we could all go, so we're going.
Yep.
And I think my favorite moment was your Alabama fish a lot. So I love sharing it with people who it's their first time, especially experienced anglers who know what they're doing and they've seen a lot of fish. Sure. And just to see the excitement over it, and then realize like, oh yeah, okay, this is cool. I mean, because we see a lot.
Yeah. That fish in particular was so cool. I mean, it was sitting in a 10-foot wide step in between 2 rapids in heavy current.
heavy current, and these fish like to use the current to bring food to them. It's the conveyor belt, so they're not like a largemouth bass in a pond at all. And your fish was in that 10-foot stretch where there's heavy flow, but it was sitting up in some kind of little ambush point there. Mm-hmm. And you put the fly in the right place, and it ate it. And we got some great pictures. It did, yeah. And then that big redeye bass. I mean, that thing. So most of the time when you think of redeye bass, we think of small streams and smaller kind of brook trout, but because the Tallapoosa is so big and there's so much more prey. The redeye bass in the Tallapoosa River get especially big, and so a 14-inch redeye, which I think that fish was 14-inch, is a trophy, and it's close to the boat record out of 8 years. So quality fish, a lot of fun. If we progressed through the day, the bite got a little slow in the afternoon, but at the end of the day, like, you're in this beautiful place, floating with friends in a raft, and just enjoying things. And we had to kind of work for in the afternoon a little bit, which happens.
Sure. But for those of you wondering, it did not feel like it was ever a grind. I mean,
no.
We never went more than an hour and a half without fish.
That seems high.
That is,
from my recollection of it, that seems like an overstatement. But
it was not slow, so I would love to see.
Well, to brag on the river, I mean, 50 plus fish days. Getting 18-inch plus fish. We're used to that. So
our expectation, it exceeded our expectations, I would say.
Yeah.
Good.
And every time I looked over, Matt was hooked up.
Yeah.
I mean, every time.
Yeah.
And this is not nymphing. This is like throwing streamers at predatory fish. And that much numbers on streamers is right here.
Well, the funny thing is, because, I'm known as the Redeye guy. And so, like, I had to catch a Redeye. And, the way things worked out, I caught like 10 Alabama bass. And I'm like, I'm not going to catch any Redeye. Like, this is embarrassing. And like, everybody around me were catching Redeye.
Didn't you catch one first thing and chuck it back because you're like, oh, we got him now. Next one, let's film it.
No, those were all Alabama bass. I was like, not another one.
Yeah, we saw that, by the way.
Yeah, so I was getting really frustrated. I was catching Alabama bass on poppers, on streamers. Like, no matter what I tried, I was just catching Alabama bass. And I fished all types of water. It wasn't like I was just fishing a certain type of water either. And so finally, later in the day, I was able to hook up on a redeye bass, which was nice. And it was beautiful. It was like, the real blue colored up one that you guys saw earlier. Yeah. And I think I caught one or two more after that, but then I lost my cell phone, and things just kind of started going south.
Were you leaving the redeye like a way to contact you? Like,
hey man.
Yeah, I was like,
call me.
If you guys, this is like the bat phone. If you get in trouble, you let me know.
But then they broke your rod.
Well, it was my buddy's rod.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
there was a broken rod on the boat.
He broke his rod.
Okay.
Thankfully, that wasn't mine. That would have been too much to stomach in one day.
Phone and a rod.
But I mean, we had a great day, and I like to get in the water more. I'm a small stream guy, and so I'm at home when I'm wet wading a stream. And typically for me, that's streams like you guys fish this morning. I mean, very small,
10, 20 feet wide.
Yeah, I mean, you're not having to cast far. And when I get in the Tallapoosa, I just have to envision it as a bunch of those tiny streams like put together.
It's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah,
but I feel at home when I'm on my feet, like in the water.
It was interesting for us because I mean it was great that we could all float together, and we're in the boat going slower, kind of picking our spots and anchoring up a little bit. We look over and you're waiting, and then, but even then, we would look back and y'all caught up with us, and y'all hit anchor again and hopped out and waited these more spots. So it was awesome. Even if you are a really big fan of wet wading and getting out there, being in the river, you still get that. You still get that feeling here. Absolutely. And even with us,
yeah, I mean, you can,
while we're doing our thing too.
I mean, part of the reason too yesterday was we had anchor issues, and so it was hard to stop the boat and hit the holes we wanted to hit. So I had a little more control if I could get out on my feet and pick apart the water the way I wanted to pick it apart.
Sure.
And that obviously did lead to catching more fish, even though Alabama does. Yeah, like you said, I mean, it's a river where you can beach a kayak or a drift boat on a shoal somewhere, and then you can get out and you can wade that shoal.
Yeah.
And so you can have a day of wet wading and floating very easy. And Drew and those guys do that all the time.
You have to, I mean, you know, and just for everybody watching, I mean, there are some times where there's higher flows, you can still catch fish. You might not wet wade as much, but if you want to wet wade and float, you know, get in the summer months. We kind of had we've had like a week without rain, which is strange for the spring for us. So it was really low and clear, which made it fun. We got to see a lot of eats and see a lot of fish. But yeah, you know, kind of let us know. And
did you hear that it was strange that there was a week without rain?
I mean, that's like, it doesn't rain. So
rain's not real.
No, rain doesn't exist.
Wait, I need to move. Where does it
You got snow or dry.
You don't. Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, it rained this month.
Yeah, we got a day of rain. This is great.
It rained,
and it rained a quarter inch.
It rained for 2 hours lightly.
See, what happens here is it rains on Wednesday and blows out all the water for the weekend.
Yeah.
And then when it's good again,
Monday
or Tuesday, and then it rains again on Wednesday, and you're just like, man,
they know your schedule.
I don't know.
And I'll say this, y'all's, you know, the BlueLineCo flies killed. I mean, they're sexy and you know.
Oh, I appreciate that.
They look great.
My largest Alabama bass came on what was the one I was serving?
You threw a meemaw quite a bit.
Yes, that was.
Well, I think everyone somehow ended up throwing meemaws yesterday. Everyone should do
Cooter Brown worked really
well. You
early.
caught that one on the Cooter Brown that he was talking about.
Yeah, the big Alabama bass was on Cooter Brown.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing some of the footage because I wasn't around you guys a lot of the day, so I didn't get to see some of these fish you're talking about. So I'm anxious to see what they look like.
Heck yeah.
He's going to send you an email with the percentages of.
It's like, nope, that's
No,
not actually
no,
a red
no,
line.
you didn't.
Actually,
Just don't ask. If you don't want to know, just don't ask.
I tell people not to
It's
ask.
the don't ask, don't tell rule.
Also, we got to try red beers. That was exciting.
Oh yeah, how was the red beer on a scale of?
Man, I was excited
1 to 2?
because I'm a fan of Bloody Marys and beers with that kind of flavor to it.
Yeah.
And after watching you guys' stuff and seeing that, I was like, man, I gotta have that.
Adam, what are you working on here?
I'm trying to go fishing, dude.
It met it exceeded expectations.
You had one hand delivered by the
did.
Hudson margarita inventor
when he
himself.
was making the last few, I was like, please give me one of those. I'm not going to ask him though. And he offered it. I was like, yep, I'll take it.
Oh yeah, I want that. Man, those things just hit right. They start the day off on the right note.
It's a good way to start the day.
It's hydrating.
Yep,
It's great.
Yeah.
that math work. That checks out.
It's healthy too. It's got tomatoes.
Yeah,
that's a
that's
vegetable.
vegetables.
It's a vegetable.
Pickle, cucumbers.
Oh, yeah.
Salad in
So-
a can.
Yeah,
Salad.
ready to roll. That's why I've been losing weight.
Wading juice. Yeah, I like it.
Where can we find your book?
So my book is available on Amazon. That's obviously where most people wind up getting it. It is in some of the Orvis stores in the Southeast only. And it's available in various fly shops, Deep South Fly Shop in Birmingham. But Amazon is primarily where folks get it. If you want it signed, obviously you have to order through me. And so people can contact me and get a copy that way.
Do you have a website?
His
I
contact.
Oh, straight on Instagram.
Instagram is probably the best.
Okay.
His Instagram handle is right here, down below.
No, it's over.
It's
It's
over
on him.
over him, down below.
Here.
Here it,
Not so much here.
here it is.
Here.
All right. Well, we'll make sure people know how to contact you if they are interested in reading your book, getting some of the hot takes on Redeyes.
It's a great
Really, really
precursor
cool.
if you're gonna do a trip. It's a great precursor to kind of.
Now, do you have it on audiobook? Because I can't read.
I do have it on Kindle, but it's not audiobook. I'm
Well-
working on that. I need to do a reading.
If I call you, will you read it to me?
I will.
Just one chapter a night. That's all I
Just a
need.
chapter a night.
All right. Let's get
All
this
right,
over with.
here we go.
Oh, God, here's out of it.
Hey, Matt, I'm going to bed.
We're on chapter 8 tonight.
That's terrible.
Well, that's great. Well, so
Yeah.
and who else is involved with
Yeah,
East Alabama?
So I think y'all are going to go fish with my partner. Well, Craig Godwin fished with us yesterday. He's going to take y'all out tomorrow on a different stretch of the same river that we were on. It's going to look a little bit different, but it's going to fish really good. There's a lot of big fish up there. So I'm excited. Yeah, so Craig Godham's my business partner, and my, we work hand in hand and side by side on this thing. So yeah, it's going to be fun, and I think y'all are going to do a podcast with him.
Yep.
Also.
So next episode, stay tuned. Craig from East Alabama is going to be on here, and also one of the other gentlemen we've heard about, the artist that Matt mentioned earlier, is planning to fish with us tomorrow as well. So stay tuned for our next episode, because we'll be talking to those guys after we get off the water tomorrow. I just want to say one of the things I thought my takeaway from this podcast was kind of how cool it is for you, Matt, that, kind of how you blend the conservation with the actual fact of fishing. You got to fish to get the conservation, and the conservation leads to better fishing, and it's just cyclical.
Yeah.
And I don't know, a lot of people, maybe might think conservation is kind of boring and just don't, throw trash in the river or something. But obviously, there's a lot more to that, and a lot more to the, the genetics that we were talking about. Right. And there's only one way to get those fish genetics.
Yeah,
we got to catch them.
Right. Yeah. That's the best way. We call it our piezometer. We go out and catch them.
I'm going fishing.
Yeah.
I got it. Going to work.
Sampling's the word I like to use.
Oh, sampling.
Sampling
I like that. I like that.
But
we
yeah,
should use that
it's really, one of the things that make it really exciting is that through this, bringing people into the fold, getting them out on these streams and rivers, what they start to understand is, where do red-eye bass fit into the ecosystem? Or as they're wading the stream, what kind of turtle is that? What kind of mussel is this? And so they start to understand the bigger picture, and that's just something you don't get from sitting in a boat on a lake.
Yep.
And so, not that lake fishing is bad, and I'm not trying to dog on that, but I'm just trying to open people's eyes.
You can't go to where we went today and be like, that sucks.
Yeah.
I hate it up there.
Yeah, right.
Unless you want people to go, keep it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, no, I'm sorry.
That place sucks.
Redact
Lots
that.
of moccasins.
Everywhere. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of it. Getting people out there on the water to see it themselves and experience it themselves, they're going to appreciate it.
Right.
And then they're going to take up swords and,
Exactly.
start protecting it themselves.
We're essentially trying to build that cohort, or that group, that advocacy group that, is going to demand that these fish be protected. And the more people you bring into that fold, the louder your voices are. And so that's something that we've obviously been trying to build. And, like where you guys went today, I mean, those are streams that people walk by, and they may look down from an overlook. Like, that's a beautiful waterfall. But when you're fishing that water, I mean, you're wading up, you're climbing that waterfall, and you're going to the next one that they don't know about because they don't get off the trail.
Yeah.
And there's streams all over Alabama that have little hidden gems and surprises like that. Yeah. Whether it's a private stand of shoal lilies that everybody goes crazy over, that are in these big stands, and people are everywhere. But hey, you go up this tributary half a mile and there's another one, and nobody's there. Yeah. And then same thing with red-eye bass, same thing with waterfalls. I mean, there's just so much beauty in the state that hasn't really been discovered. Maybe that's a good thing in a way.
Yep.
But we have to constantly toe this line between exploitation and awareness and conservation.
Yep.
And that's something that that's why we try to, anything we do to promote fly fishing for red-eye bass or anything in the state, we try to really couple that with a hefty dose of conservation and awareness and understanding what are the issues in this water system.
Yep.
So
it's a hard line to walk for sure.
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, it's been awesome hanging out with you guys. We cannot appreciate y'all hanging out with us enough. I mean, y'all inviting us down. We had a blast.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been awesome coming back home and doing some stuff even in Alabama that I haven't done a ton of.
Right.
I've lived around here a little bit and kind of touched my toes in the water of it. Obviously, I knew about it. I knew that I needed to come do it.
Yeah.
So it was awesome to actually be able to get to do it with these guys. I mean, the people at the top top of the game over here.
Maybe we can make it an annual thing.
Let's do it.
I think it might need to be more than that.
Hit some small streams, hit some big rivers. And,
yeah. For
and all
sure.
the other stuff in between.
We need to. Well, I guess that's it. Yeah, we definitely appreciate it. We couldn't have done this entire trip or any of this production this week without our food and beverage manager, Jared, who does a lot more than food and beverages.
Come stand over here. Right?
He does a lot more than food and beverage for us. He helps us out with everything. You've seen him in some of the other bass videos, but we can't do what we do without Jared.
Yeah,
we have to have him.
Most important thing is keeping everybody hydrated.
Yeah.
Adam is a grumpy man without his hydration.
You can't get good content without good hydration. Anyways, but we really appreciate you guys tuning in. Please check out the links below. Make sure you contact these guys with questions. Anything if you ever want to come down here yourself, if you have any questions about these bass, reach out to these guys. They're going to be the answers for you. You need to come down here and experience this for yourself. If you call yourself a fly fisherman and if you like to streamer fish, this is something that you got to come to. So there you have it. Well, I think we have a F3T showing that we have to sneak off to over here, or sneak into over here. So we should go to something that we sponsored, I guess. So anyways, but thanks so much for tuning in. Stay tuned for the next episode, which will be dropping soon, where we're going to fish with, as we said, Craig and one of the other guys who is kind of big in this area as well for doing a lot of the art, like what Matt mentioned. He did the art for the Redeye Slam certificate. So anyways, stay tuned for that.
We're going to go meet all of you guys that are watching this.
Yeah, we're going to go meet you guys in here.
So thanks everyone else for watching.
Thanks, guys.
He turned 90 degrees, jumped out of the water, and ate the fly on entry. That was violent.
Belief is that the more people I can take here and to see this and to see our creeks and streams, the more people want to protect them. The Redeyes, what's unique about them is that, you know, they're smaller, but they're super colorful. Like if we catch some today in the spring, they have this really crazy blue color on their throat.
Adam, what are you working on here?
I'm trying to go fishing, dude.